So what comes after Git push are different ways you can contribute to open source. As Max said, my name is Justin Dorfman. I'm the Director of Developer Relations at MaxCDN. I live in Los Angeles, California, and you can follow me on Twitter and GitHub at @jdorfman. Now, before we get started, I want to make a confession to everyone here, and the confession is I'm not a software engineer. I am a open source contributor and advocate, but I don't know what a binary tree is, and I don't care what a binary tree is, but it doesn't matter because I can still make a big impact in the open source community without having to know that. And the point of today's talk is to basically show you, and hopefully someone you know, that they can be like me and contribute to open source. So, how many people here, please raise your hand if you contribute to open source? Awesome. Does anyone here go to opensource.com? If you do, raise your hand. Okay. So I was there last December, and I took a poll, and the poll was, how many open source projects do you contribute to in 2015? And the fact that none had 36% of the vote, I stopped myself and I said, what is going on? What is wrong? Opensource.com is a website for open source contributors and enthusiasts. And part of me said, well, maybe they are contributing, but they don't know it. Or maybe they're just too scared? I don't know. So with that said, I came up with 8 different ways. I'm going to show you today 8 different ways that I contribute to open source. And 7 of them do not require a text editor. So without any further ado, I'm going to get started with infrastructure. And how many people here work for a software as a service, a platform as a service, or infrastructure as a service company? Anyone? Okay, perfect. This is good news. So I work for a content delivery network, and we get to work with great organizations such as jQuery, Bootstrap, Debian, rawgit.com, and many, many more. Together, they push 2.5 petabytes of bandwidth a month on our platform. And we're glad to give that away because we use their products and we don't pay them. So if we can help them, if that's the payment that we can give to them, then all the better. But what we're doing is not anything unique. All these companies on this screen all offer free as in beer services to the open source community and developers. And these are just the ones I knew off the top of my head and can fit on one slide. There are many, many more, and hopefully the people that raise their hand, you can do that as well. I reached out to Ryan Grove and I said, Ryan, he runs rawgit.com, one of the projects we sponsor. And I said, what is it that open source developers get when they get free or discounted infrastructure? And he said, they learn more, they innovate more, and they're more likely to pay it forward by sharing their work with the world. Everybody wins. So he's right, everybody does win. And I hope more people can win by donating infrastructure to the open source community. Next, I'm going to talk about project management. Anyone here ever manage a project? Okay. You might know that in the beginning it's very fun, project management, because you have all these ideas and you just can't wait to get started. And then when you get started, you say, okay, maybe I bit off a little more than I can chew. And then you get to the point, well, I get to the point where I'm like, why the hell did I choose this project? And by the end, I'm really happy I stuck through it because because for me, accomplishing something that is very, very hard to do is very rewarding and gets me out of bed every morning. I learned this especially in June of 2015, a Mozillian by the name of Jonathan Kingston. He opened up a GitHub issue on one of the jQuery Foundation's GitHub repositories, and he was asking to get sub-resource integrity, a new web application security standard implemented into the site. And by all means, it should have taken, it shouldn't have taken as long as it did. But the problem is, when you got 14 contributors. You got 8 different mock-up revisions. You have multiple conversations, online, offline, IRC, yada, yada, yada. It's not all on GitHub. Things start to slow down. And also, there's other priorities that were more important than this. So even though it was 8 months to finish, it was a long project. Let's just put it that way. Now you might be looking at this and say, oh my God, 8 months for a code snippet and copy to clipboard function. And as I said, you gotta realize that, especially in an open source project, resources are diverted. And just like in any company, but the fact that most of these people are volunteers and they don't get paid and they have full-time jobs and they have kids and they have all those different variables weigh down and increase the time of the project. So if you keep it realistic and you say, okay, this is gonna take a little longer than I thought it was going to, then you'll be able to get through it. And bottom line is open source projects, they need managers. They need project managers. And they usually end up being contributors who typically do not want to be managers. But if you keep it realistic, they can do whatever it takes to get the job done. So with that said, the people that didn't raise their hand, who wants to be a project manager? Good idea. Hosting a meetup. How many people go to meetups? Awesome. Leave your hands up if you love going to meetups. Okay. So I can guarantee you that if you hosted a meetup, it's just as enjoyable, especially if your customers come to your place of business and give you product feedback. That is very fun. At our office, we are allowed to host meetups. We're actually encouraged to host meetups. We do Girl Develop It, we do Docker. This right here is our CEO, Chris, who pushes us to do meetups, and now I know why. It's just because he doesn't want to go anywhere and he just wants to walk down the hall to go to a meetup. He's very smart. To host a meetup, this is what I suggest. Go to meetup.com. Do not, and I repeat, do not start your own. Just reach out to the ones that have meetups already, established communities, and say, hey, I have a projector, I have chairs, I can get pizza, I can get junk food, I can get calories, all that fun stuff. But the calories are optional. If they're gonna come to just eat food, do you really want them there? But working projector, working chairs, those are a must. And then you can have your own little meetup. So who's gonna host a meetup? Good. Documentation. So here is Margaret Hamilton. Margaret Hamilton was the lead software engineer on Project Apollo. That standing next to her is all her code and documentation that helped put a man on the moon. So with that said, let's give her a hand. She is my hero, and I have a little tiny open source project called Shiml, which stands for the Shell Markup Language. And I'm no Margaret Hamilton, I'm just going to put that out there. And so I decided, my buddy writes most of the code, I do all the documentation, so I was gonna keep it simple. I decided code snippets, little description, screenshots, because screenshots are like 1,000,000 words, just like a photo is 1,000, screenshots are 1,000,000 in my book. And then a demo. Demos for me are great because since this is a bash script, it basically, what Runnable does is it takes the standard output from bash, converts it to HTML, and then people can do that before they download or install anything, and don't write you angry emails saying you just wasted my time. So I think demos are really great and they're underutilized and more people should use them. I talked to my buddy Ahmad, who is the VP of engineering over at Mashape, and we did like a little promotion with them, and I ended up on Kong's documentation, and Kong is their open source project that is a microservices and API management layer built on top of Nginx. And I ended up on their documentation, and I was blown away. It was so beautiful. It was so clean. It was just the way documentation should be. And I asked them, I'm like, do you have a person or do you have a group of developers? Like, who works on your documentation? And what was crazy was when he told me, it wasn't that we spend more time on documentation than the actual code. It was that everyone in the company, from the CEO to the developer to the design teams, the sales teams, and the marketing teams, they all contribute to the documentation. They have like a documentation culture, and I believe that because when I go to their documentation, I encourage you to take a look at it after this talk. It is so unbelievably complete and beautiful and just makes sense. So, yeah. Anyone like the movie Wayne's World? I do. That's why. Okay, great. Awesome. Thank you. Yeah. So if you ever heard that thing that open source is free, it's, excuse my French, it's bullshit. It really is, because open source isn't free. Maybe you're not paying for it, but someone else is. And I work with a bunch of foundations and just indie open source contributors that are near burnout, and they need some love. So what I'm going to show you is actually really cool, because I got to sit in for the catper.js monthly meeting, and the problem is this is a continuing issue, is that they don't have any money. They're paying for everything out of pocket, and all their users are just leeching off them and not contributing back code or any funds. So what's an idea? Why don't we just put some sponsored links in a README file? And some people were like, that's so stupid. No, but some said yes. So I took that idea and I went over to Sparkle Project. And if anyone has a Mac in here, you might be privy to this application. It's in basically every Cocoa framework application, and it basically installs it. It's 3 guys that run it, hundreds of millions of installs on Mac OS X applications. And we pay them $250 a month just for that little link right there. And it's a win-win, because they now have funds, and we get to reach an audience that basically we can cater to. We run a content delivery network, and the people that write applications need content delivery. So remember when I said earlier, win-win? This is another win-win. And I asked Cornell, who is one of the 3 maintainers, I said, what is it that you do with the money now? And they now have a budget for bug bounties, which they used to pay out of pocket. And bug bounties aren't cheap, as some might know, and infrastructure. So think about that. Maybe there's a project that you use in your organization, and maybe you can find something where you can align to get them to get your bosses to say, hey, listen, let's help sustain this project. It's a win-win. That's what I got to say about that. But wait, there's more. This here is Russell Keith McGee. He is a core contributor to the Django project. He also has his own little project called Beware. He's also a father with 2 children, and he has a full-time consulting gig. So he's a very, very, very busy person. And why I like Russell is, despite how busy he is, he still has time to reach out and individually help newbies and first-time contributors. And I found that really awesome. I reached out to him, and I said, Russell, I like what you're doing. What can we do together? And he's like, I want these. And I'm like, what the hell are those? And what they are is they're challenge coins. And challenge coins are traditionally given out in the military for achievements and boost morale. And he wants to give them to his contributors. And I was like, that is very unique, and I want to be a part of that. So he went to DjangoCon Europe, and people kept going to him saying, I want a coin. How do I get this? What do I have to do? So a relatively simple but tangible reward can be a great way to drive engagement. That's what he learned. And now he's got more contributors than he knows how to do with. And these were the first two at DjangoCon to get their challenge coins. So they are rocking it. I don't have my challenge coin yet, but I gotta, I guess, go to PyCon. We'll have to do that, Kirsten. On-site volunteering. Who here volunteers and hates it? Exactly, no one. Because you're on-site volunteers now. Because on-site volunteering to me is a lot of fun. And I did it with the Open Source Initiative, the logo in the middle. Anyone know the Open Source Initiative? Who's a member? Raise your hand. Awesome. We're gonna have a beer after, but none of the rest of you are allowed. So Open Source Initiative, I'm a member, I'm on their mailing list, and the mailing list told me that, hey, there's a conference in Southern California called SCALE, Southern California Linux Expo, and we're looking for volunteers. I said, well, I'm gonna be a volunteer. That's awesome. So I did, and I met all these amazing people that like the same thing I do, which is open source and contributing. And I got to talk to them. Some knew what the OSI was, some didn't, so I explained to the ones that didn't, and I partied with the ones, well, partied at the booth. It's not that much partying, so. All in all, it was just a really, really great experience. But the greatest part was this guy came up to the booth. And this is the guy who taught me about open source. He worked with my father back probably like '99, and I went there during summer. And I was working in the warehouse, and I passed by his office, and this guy's got his feet up on the table, and he's downloading music, and just has Sobe bottles everywhere. I'm like, I want to do what he does. So I asked my dad, I was like, what is that? He's like, oh, that's an IT guy. I was like, okay, that's what I'm going to do. So yeah, I became an IT guy. But Mark is awesome because he came up to the booth and he looked at me and he's like, oh, you're Bill's son. And Bill's my dad. And it was really interesting because I was like, whoa, I could have ran into you, but the fact that I didn't have to go anywhere and you came to me, it's pretty amazing. And he told me, hey, I'm really proud of you. You're doing well. And in my head, I started to go, I'm just a volunteer. It's not that big a deal. And I caught myself. I was like, no, I'm an open source contributor. I am helping this organization, this initiative, to spread the word and get new members and move the organization forward. So no, I'm not a volunteer. I'm volunteering, but I am a contributor. And you can be one too. And next time I'm here and you raise your hands saying you like volunteering because it's fun. Art direction, this is Michael Gross, and he's been called the best goddamn art director ever by one of his bosses at National Lampoon. He's done amazing work, and unfortunately he passed away last November, but his best work, I think, for me, was the Ghostbusters logo. And the Ghostbusters logo is great because you don't need any text. You just see it and you're like, oh, it's a Ghostbusters logo. And you can see that today with all the advertising for the movie coming out. They don't need to say Ghostbusters. It's just you see the logo and you're like, okay, there's a ghost and slash, so Ghostbusters. So as you can see, I'm pretty passionate about logos and I love stickers as well. But I like logos, but I don't like this logo. And this logo used to be the old Bash logo, and I hated it, and I'm not gonna put a sticker like that. I'm gonna go to Kinko's with like a bitmap and print it out on, no, not gonna happen. So I emailed the contributor, or the maintainer of Bash, Chet Ramey, and I said, hey, do you have any other logos, like maybe line art that I can make a sticker to? He's like, no, this is all we got. It's about 20 years old. I think it was made in GIMP, and the artwork's lost. I'm like, oh, bummer. So I said, he's like, but you know what, Hotshot? You can go and make some of your own, and you can contribute that back to the open source community. I said, okay, fine, I will. So I hired a firm. As an art director, I hired a firm, and they sent me this, and I was like, oh, those are cool, but you're probably not going to fly. And they didn't. He just shook his head saying, next. So hired another firm, and they sent me this, and I said, oh, I think we got one. I think we got a winner. No. But as I said before, I don't give up. So I hired the same firm. I said, I think we're on to something. What do we got? He likes all three. So what do you do when you have three choices? You have an election. You put it to a vote. So he put it on his mailing list, and I was like, oh, wow, I'll get like 2 votes. Viral on Reddit, viral on Twitter. 30,000 votes later, we have a new official Bash logo. And I'm very, very pleased with it. And yeah, it was a 5-month process, but we got it out. And now Bash, the GNU Bash project, has a logo. I'm going to segment that into fundraising. Now, I was getting off my high of getting this new logo out, 5 months of bashing my head, no pun intended. And I saw a tweet by the Free Software Foundation that houses the GNU project, which is GNU Bash. And I saw it, and it said, hey, we need $200,000. That's what we're looking to raise. I was like, I got an idea. I'm going to put together an official Bash giveaway, sticker giveaway. And the idea was, you make a donation to the Free Software Foundation on their website. You print out the transaction receipt. You put that in a business-size envelope. With another business-size envelope, you write your name and address and stamp. If there was no stamp, I just threw it away. But on the, that's a lie, I put a stamp on it. On the envelope that contains, so after all that, I said, we're gonna make a killing. And $47 later, not $200,000, but you know what? It's $47 more than they didn't have. So that's the way I saw it. But the coolest thing ever came out of this is that I got this email constantly like, hey, that's great, but I don't live in the United States. So can you just put it up on a website like unixstickers.com or something? And I was like, that's a good idea. So what I did was I reached out, I opened up a live chat, right? And I said, hey, I have a business proposition. Is your CEO available? And she's like, okay, yeah, I guess. And he emailed me saying, what's going on? I was like, I have the original artwork, and I'll give it to you exclusively. If you put it on your website, you sell the stickers, but here's the caveat. You have to donate part of the proceeds to the Free Software Foundation. And he said, okay. This is good, because next month we're launching a donation program that actually allows us to do something like this. And I was like, awesome. So we got them up on the site, and 27 cents of every single sticker goes to the foundation. And I was really excited. And I don't dance, so I just went to Giphy.com and found this and said, I'm dancing. Now here's the coolest part. Every month, the Free Software Foundation, without having to do anything, gets residuals from this sticker. So while one little diatribe attempt of raising $200,000, still, it's not amazing money, but you know what? It's recurring, and it's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. We had a dip in April, but don't worry, we're working on it. We're working on the marketing for it. And May is not over, so don't roll your eyes, please. So what am I getting out of this? What am I trying to do here? What I'm trying to tell you is you are a contributor if you do any of these things. You don't need to write code. I just showed you 8 different ways. 7 of them don't require a text editor. Hopefully, if opensource.com runs this same poll at the end of this year, none will be at 0%. That is my goal. Who will help? I can't hear you. Who will help? No. Tell me! Who will help?
I will.
There we go. All right, who's got questions? Don't get off all at once. Yes, sir.
So, what are your thoughts about bringing non-traditional ways of bringing non-traditional contributors onto a project? Like, if I've got a project and I've got a bunch of gearheads, we're all gearheads, right?
Yep.
But you know what we really need is we need an ops guy because we don't know how to do that, or we need an artist who can design a great logo. How do I get them comfortable coming and being a part of this? Because frankly, they're not coming to OSCON. They're probably just waking up and reading us.
You're right, and that's a great question, and I'm not going to repeat the whole thing. I'm just going to give you the answer. So I'm beating my head about this. If you saw Russell from Beware, he had the same thing. Is like, how do we get other people, like a designer, to be able to, like the Django Foundation had to end up paying someone to do their site because everyone kept falling off. You know, they weren't into it. And one thing that we kept going back and forth is saying, maybe we start young and we go to high schools or even colleges, like art colleges. And the thing is employers are gonna wanna see work. And if you can show them open source, like things in the real world, like, hey, this is what I contributed to, then wouldn't you wanna hire that person? And I think it just comes down to education, and the GDI, the Girl Develop It's, and the Chick-Techs, okay. And all of them are hopefully gonna branch out more into, because, you know, as I showed you, is that open source is just more than, you know, Git push. It's more hopefully getting designers and translators and all different types of non-traditional ways of giving back. And unfortunately, there's like no movement on that yet, but it's definitely something that should be. And I think anyone who might know anyone in the art teaching, you know, whoever teaches art or something like that, can maybe email me or something. And
So you're saying you're going to fix it? You're going to do it?
I hope so. I mean, it'd be fun, but I'm not authoritative in that world. I think that if teachers are on board with it, and schools definitely should be on board with it, especially art schools, because they're measured by how many people graduate and then get jobs after. So, you know, you can design as many fake logos as you want, but if you're not dealing with a customer such as an open source maintainer, then that's really not that great. I mean, in theory, you're a good designer, but can you work with people? Can you push through? Can you wait 6 months? That's the whole thing, is can you wait it out? Can you be patient? And I think a lot, especially beginners, are probably not going to, but I hope that will change and more. There are a few people, I forgot his name, but he works at Adobe. He's, I think it's called like open source design, and basically his motto is making open source pretty and not, you know, ugly. So, for his name, I feel really bad, but hope that is not too.
No, the schooling is great.
Okay, thank you. Yes, sir.
I'm curious how you funded all those creative agencies to actually design the logo, and you know that's not a cheap thing to do.
That's a good question. And who funded it was MaxCDN, the company I work for, and they were very adamant about, we don't want this about us. We use Bash, everyone in all of our edge servers, that's the default shell. And you know, Chet gave us a shout out in his newsletter, and that was good enough for us. And yeah, it's just, that's the rule. What I really like working for the company I work for is they're not like, you need to, there's no like stipulations. It's like, go contribute to open source. If you can get a link back, awesome. And 8% of our referral traffic is from open source projects, so we're doing fine. I don't need Bash to, you know, continuing, you know, we don't need to put our name on it, except at conferences like OSCON. Who else? Yes, you. Okay. How are we on time? Like, did I like go really fast? Okay, good. So, okay, great. So you can email me, you can Twitter me, you can GitHub me. I really appreciate you all coming out, and hopefully I inspired you to, contribute to open source in non-traditional forms. Thank you.